While much of the world has moved into a kind of post-COVID state, managing and tolerating the virus's spread through society, the world's most populated country has gone its own way. For the past 3 years, China has stuck to its zero-COVID strategy, relying on mass testing and strict lockdowns to stamp out cases when and where they emerge. For a long time, this worked well. But recently we've seen that this has angered Chinese citizens, which have been causing real trouble for the CCP. Protests have been sparking up in every province. What does this mean for China, and how must they proceed? Earlier this year, an outbreak in Shanghai became the most widespread in the region since the beginning of the pandemic. The city of Shanghai will be locked down in 2 stages over 9 days, while authorities carry out COVID-19 testing. The important financial hub has battled a new wave of infections for nearly a month, although case numbers are not high by some international standards. The lockdown happened in 2 stages, with the eastern side of the city under restrictions from Monday until the 1st of April, and the western side from 1 to 5 April. Public transport will be suspended and firms and factories must halt operations or work remotely, authorities said. Other lockdowns during the pandemic have affected entire Chinese provinces, though people could often still travel within those regions. But Shanghai, due to its high population density, is the largest single city to be locked down to date. Since then, officials had until now said the eastern Chinese port and financial hub must keep running for the good of the economy. The staggered approach to this lockdown means half the city will remain functioning at a time. From June, things cooled off, until another outbreak in October. By late November, the country was notching up record infections. The government dealt with it as it has done, by locking down. But after 3 years, many of the nation's citizens have had enough. Protests have begun to spread across major cities. In my 20 years in China, I've never seen anything like this, Shanghai-based journalist Lisa Movius said. The protests are remarkable, the crackdown is remarkable. It's really unlike anything I've seen before. It is pretty scary. The protests were ignited by a tragic fire in an apartment complex in Urumqi, in Xinjiang province, Movius said. At least 10 people died, and there was speculation residents could not get out of the building because they had been bolted inside. Everyone was so sad and horrified that this would happen, but it especially resonates here in Shanghai, because while Urumqi had a much longer, 100-day lockdown, we had a similar, 60-day lockdown this spring. What happened in Urumqi could absolutely have happened to anyone here, and we spent those 2 months terrified that our buildings would catch on fire and we wouldn't be able to get out of them because, in many cases, our doors were bolted, we were locked into our apartment units. So it's something that really hits a nerve here, after a year of really stringent measures. While anti-lockdown protests aren't anything new in China, these new protests have a broader remit, and a broader audience crossing age and class divides. Some protesters have called the Chinese Communist Party's leadership into question. Many demonstrators chose to hold up sheets of white paper, symbolizing the censorship rife in the world's most populous country. Movius said it was difficult to say where things would go from here. China was in a tough spot vaccine-wise, as it refused to use imported vaccines, and reluctance among the older population in particular was high. However, there were signs that the government stance was softening, with the vice premier saying in November that China faced a new situation. However, any move away from the zero-COVID strategy is likely to have severe effects. The lifting of zero-COVID policies in China would see a tsunami of infections and almost 1.6 million deaths, a study claims, citing in part China's low vaccination rate of elderly residents. The peer-reviewed study by Shanghai's Fudan University, published in the Nature journal, said a decision by Chinese authorities to lift such measures could see more than 112 million symptomatic cases of COVID-19, 5 million hospitalizations, and 1.55 million deaths. However, it also said that with access to vaccines and antivirals, and maintaining implementation of non-pharmaceutical interventions, authorities could prevent the health system being overwhelmed. It suggested these factors could be more of a focus in future policies. While the government message is that the zero-COVID policy will prevail over the highly transmissible variant, health officials have said they cannot open up now because vaccine coverage is insufficient and health resources too uneven across the country. In a city that's been on its knees for 2 weeks, parts of it reduced to something like a ghost town, the streets are now suddenly busy with panic shoppers. Almost 25 million people will be affected, the eastern side of the city first, then at the end of next week the western side. Wuhan was sealed off at the very outset of this pandemic. Before Christmas it was a Lebanon. Now China's commercial and financial capital is being shut. Just a few days ago officials here said Shanghai was too big and too important to lock down. The question now on many residents' lips will be whether 9 days is enough. Some rules, however, have been relaxed. Isolation is now for only 8 days, rather than 5 days at an isolation center, plus 3 at home. China is also now allowing international arrivals for the first time since March 2022. Recently, China has seen its first deaths from COVID-19 in months. On Saturday, the 3rd of December, China reported 4,231 new COVID cases, bringing the total number of cases to 1.7 million since the pandemic began. Overall, China says more than 90% of the population has been fully vaccinated. However, less than half of people aged 80 and over have received 3 doses of vaccine. The vaccination rate back in April among this age group was much lower, less than 20%. Unemployment is rising, especially amongst young people, and the property market is weakening. China's lockdown measures are also affecting businesses and consumers in the rest of the world, who have come to rely on China for supplies of goods. Factory closures have also led to fears of a shortage of toys ahead of Christmas. It seems like China is going to keep getting worse before it gets better, with no end in sight for China's zero-COVID policy. This is likely to continue to be an ongoing issue that'll affect the entire world, economists suggest. What do you think about China's stance on COVID? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Fit Safety for more.